leading the way.
Happening right now, primary day showdown. Race results are rolling in here at the bottom of your screen. And good evening to you. I'm Cherie Palello.
An exciting lead up, and tonight it is getting going. We have team coverage tonight. Reporters spread out all across the area, covering all the big races.
But we begin tonight with WLWT News 5's Todd Dykes on a major win as Dayton's former mayor comes out on top in the race for governor, winning the Democratic nomination tonight. Hi, Todd.
That's right, Cherie. You know, after spending the last 8 years as Dayton's mayor, Nan Whaley now has her sights set on Ohio's governor mansion. The 46-year-old Democrat cruised past her opponent in today's primary, former Cincinnati Mayor John Cranley, to become their party's nominee for governor. Now, both NBC News and the AP called the race for Whaley less than 90 minutes after polls closed statewide. Whaley and her running mate Cheryl Stevens, an elected leader in Cleveland Heights, took the stage about 45 minutes ago to talk about their victory. Their shared message: Ohio needs bold new ideas to move the state forward. Whaley was sharply critical of the incumbent she'll face this fall, Republican Mike DeWine. Whaley saying DeWine has spent his 4 decades in government moving the Buckeye State in the wrong direction from where it once was.
Folks moved here because Ohio was building the future, a state of innovation and creativity, of inventors and astronauts. But today, a small group of politicians and corporate lobbyists are standing in the way. They're more interested in holding on to power than making sure the future is built in Ohio again. I don't know about you, but I'm ready for a change.
Change, certainly the theme of that speech, and rounds of loud applause. Whaley concluded her speech this evening by saying that Ohio is at a crossroads. She said people in the state are working harder but falling further behind, all while DeWine and others in Columbus hold on to power and, quote, line their pockets. Strong words that mark the start of what could be a very contentious general election contest. For now, reporting live in Dayton, Todd Dykes, WLWT News 5.
Todd, did Whaley talk at all about Cincinnati's former mayor John Cranley during tonight's victory speech?
She did, Cherie. In fact, Whaley said, quote, "I want to thank my friend John Cranley. This has been a hard-fought campaign, but I genuinely appreciate his ideas and plans and look forward to working him over the next 6 months," end quote. So kind words for the Cranley team, but clearly a big victory tonight for Nan Whaley. Cherie?
No doubt about it, and it was called very early, which I think surprised a lot of people. Todd Dykes live for us tonight with the Whaley campaign. Todd, thanks so much. A disappointing night, as you can imagine, for former Cincinnati Mayor John Cranley. A hard-fought campaign came to a halt tonight.
And WLWT News 5's Curtis Fuller is with the Cranley camp tonight. A very successful politician, Curtis. Not often emotional, but we did see that side of him tonight for sure.
Yeah, it was real obvious that he was very emotional in this loss. I can tell you he said that he congratulated Nan Whaley. He did also call her a friend. He also says she's a good person and says she had a great campaign. I should tell you that Cranley described Whaley's win as decisive. I heard that word decisive, and I know that that word was used intentionally. He called it a decisive victory. And, you know, going into this race, most observers said the candidates had more things in common than things that were different, both calling for a growing Ohio, both critical of Governor Mike DeWine. John Cranley says the focus now is to win in November.
We have a lot going on in this state and in this country, and I hope that people stay involved through November. I also want to congratulate Senator Sherrod Brown and many others and recognize that we as a party have got to come together and unify in light of recent events and the many issues that face us.
Yeah, so again, you could hear in his voice the disappointment of tonight and this long campaign. His running mate, Teresa Fetter, says they will be back. Reporting live, I'm Curtis Fuller, WLWT News 5.
Curtis, any one factor you think that sealed his fate in this election?
You know, that's interesting, and I asked a few people. You have to think that that early endorsement by Senator Sherrod Brown really tilted this election because both Nan Whaley and John Cranley, they have so much in common. Both mayors, both served on their city councils. And so that early endorsement by the senator, many said, even down here, that probably tipped the scale just a bit and again gave her a decisive, I will use John Cranley's word, a decisive victory tonight.
All right, Curtis, thank you. Yeah, much like the endorsement of former President Donald Trump in the GOP Senate race, weighing heavily both of those endorsements. Thank you so much, Curtis Fuller.
Shifting gears now to Ohio's U.S. Senate race, and J.D. Vance beating out several other Republicans, sealing that nomination tonight. So I believe he is addressing the crowd and accepting the nomination. So let's listen in.
Flood us with even worse drugs, the fentanyl that's made in communist China. How about we put them both in jail, ladies and gentlemen? Why don't we do that? And our people are caught between a Democrat Party that bends the knee to major American corporations and their woke values, because the Democrats actually agree with those ridiculous values, 42 genders and all the other insanity. And an establishment Republican Party that actually thinks the only thing worse than not teaching American children that there are 42 genders is actually saying no to a multinational corporation doing business with the Chinese. Ladies and gentlemen, the people who are caught between the corrupt political class of the left and the right, they need a voice. They need a representative. And that's going to be me. And the thing, all of the great things about running for office, the people I got to meet, that we have a beautiful state. I grew up not too far from here, about 45 minutes away, and I didn't spend a whole lot of time in Lake Erie growing up. I hate to admit it because I'm not a Cleveland sports guy, but Cleveland is a beautiful town. And there are a lot of no, that's not acceptable. But the thing that I will say that breaks my heart when I've gone across the state of Ohio is the people who look me in the eye and say, please, please don't forget about me. And to all of those people, whether they're in our party or not, I promise you, I remember where I came from. I remember who made me who I am. And when I get to the U.S. Senate, I will not forget about you. I will not forget about you. So tonight, we're going to celebrate. Maybe a little too much. I'm 37 years old. I've got my celebration packet, a pack of Gatorade, a couple of Advil, and some Tums. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not the same man I was 10 years ago. But tomorrow, when I say the people of Ohio need a voice, tonight we celebrate, and tomorrow we start a campaign that ensures they have that voice. We're going to do it, ladies and gentlemen. God bless you, and thank you again.
So from hillbilly elegy to the top of the hill, a lot of money spent in that race. He wins on the Republican side of that U.S. Senate race. And everybody around America was really focused on Ohio and wondering who would win this, and he emerges victorious.
And when I hosted that U.S. Senate debate with the Republican candidates, he was lagging behind in the polls. He was sort of toward the bottom of the five that we had there. And since then, he has clearly climbed to the top.
Yep, the debates and the Donald Trump endorsement, two big factors. The numbers rolling in, it made it awfully difficult tonight so far for the other four big names in the GOP race for Senate in Ohio. Again, they've been lagging way behind.
And WLWT News 5, Stephen Albritton breaking down candidate reaction now to losing this race. Hi there, Stephen.
Hey, Mike and Tree. All four of the top opponents have now conceded this race. Mike Gibbons, who was a front runner just a couple of months ago, was the first to do so. He spent millions and millions of his own money to try and win, and will likely end up fourth at best. He wrote on Twitter that the night didn't go as planned, but he doesn't want supporters to be discouraged. Jane Timken also conceded to J.D. Vance in a tweet saying, "I'm proud of the race I've run and know we must retake the Senate in November." Josh Mandel, who called himself a forever Trumper, just spoke a few minutes ago about this loss.
We made some promise.
I don't think we have that sound from Josh Mandel, but he thanked.
I just called JD to congratulate him on a hard-fought victory. I look forward to voting for him in November and doing what I can to help him beat Tim Ryan. The stakes are too high for this country to not support the nominee.
And that's Josh Mandel just a few minutes ago. Matt Dolan as well tweeted out his concession statement and will back J.D. Vance heading into November. Stephen Albritton, WLWT News 5.
All right, Stephen, thanks so much. And be sure to stay with WLWT for all of your Election Day race results right now on WLWT.com. We have a complete list of the very latest results and those very key races to you.